Good day. Thank you for coming to Becoming Impactful. I am your host, Anthony Nayagan. And today we have an exciting guest back in our show. His name is Dr. Jonathan Chuck. And you have seen him in our previous episodes. Um, and he is back. Let me briefly make an introduction of him for those of you who are meeting him for the first time. Dr. Jonathan Tuck, he got his PhD um, from Oxford University, and he is an expert in holistic energy, and of course, he is a physicist. Okay, so we are going to talk a little bit about. We are going to start the conversation um, about consciousness as it relates to human energy. All right. And that is going to be our discussion today. And But before that, John, why don't you say hello to the audience, please?
Hi, thank you for having me back, Anthony. Yeah, it's really great to be with you. And I think since we've been working together, since you very kindly um, shared a pre-copy of your book with me, so that I was able to get a better feeling of who you are, where you're coming from, since we interviewed you on Chewy last year. Um, And I think that I was immediately drawn to your work and saw it as being absolutely visionary and in line with um, the us entering the age of the golden era, and how the ideologies that you are presenting were absolutely in line with what I believe is needed, particularly in terms of um, leadership and growing companies that are everlasting. I think what also inspired me a lot was your ability to link together spirituality with quantum physics and how it actually worked in the real sense.
Oh,
So yeah, Anthony, it's a pleasure working with you, and thank you for having me back.
thank you. Thank you. Thank you. It, by the way, so let's start the interview going back to the same question. Uh, let's talk about consciousness as it relates to holistic energy. Uh, well, we know holistic energy has, multi-dimensional meaning. But let's talk about holistic energy in terms of human energy and and the quantum scope of holistic energy within human beings. Is that a good question to start with?
What's the question?
The question is, let's talk about holistic energy from a quantum perspective within a human being as it relates to our consciousness.
Okay, go ahead.
Okay.
Well,
Is it thinking time or is it? All right.
I think it's a huge topic.
It
It's a
is a huge
huge
topic.
topic, and I think that at the very highest level, um, the fundamental components of existence of consciousness is quantum connectivity.
Yeah.
So I think at the very highest level, what was understood when quantum physics was first investigated and described was that at a fundamental level, everything is energy and everything is connected. And by everything, that includes the intangible. That, in fact, is actually more about the intangible, such as your thoughts, such as how your thoughts can affect you physically and mentally and on all of the planes, and indeed everything in the universe and everything that you perceive in your universe.
Mhm.
Is that a good place to start?
That is a great place to start. I mean, you are talking about quantum entanglement and and observing the power of observation of human mind, and can we observe the quantum entanglement we have with the universe and the divine, at deeper levels. Is that within the reach of human beings? Absolutely, it is.
Yeah, I think
Is the only creation who can delve as deep into those levels of consciousness and observe, um, in a scientific way. I mean, let's leave the spiritual part behind, but even in a scientific way, you can do that, isn't it?
absolutely, and I think what I discussed leads quite succinctly into the fact that it's understood that the Earth, the solar system, indeed the entire universe, is one symbiotic organism.
Yes, yes,
So everything that we think and do as an individual has an effect on absolutely everything else.
everything else. Yes, yes, absolutely.
So moving forwards into the new era, the more we go into our heart spaces and approach everything with underlying unconditional love and with compassion and with a view to a much, much, much longer future.
Mhm,
Um, and we integrate ourselves with the harmonic energies of the earth and indeed the universe and of God himself,
mhm,
then the faster we will move towards the experience that we have the significant opportunity for at this time.
mhm, mhm. Yeah, absolutely. Um, See, you mentioned love. Well, of course, at the gross level, love is an emotion. Um, but at the subtle levels, it's an incredibly powerful transforming energy. Um, and that can be observed even at very, very fundamental micro levels, even in the behaviors of quantum fields interacting, within the field itself, the quality of that energy, that energy that kind of attracts everything and brings everything together, um, into, one unison, in other words. Um, and that happens at energy level. Um, and that's what I see. What do you think about that?
Absolutely. I mean, I think, it's um, very much proven in even modern physics that we can affect everything around us. And I've talked a lot about how you can redesign the environment that you perceive
Mhm.
and what your environment presents to you by simply changing your mentality and changing your core belief structures. However, the the main challenge in doing that is in accessing your memories in your subconscious. So a lot of what we do is actually looking at, and there are many ways of doing it, but a lot of what we do is looking at how you can use mindfulness, use meditation, use and I teach some simple mind techniques in order to begin to access your subconscious to remove the negative connotations with memories and to affirm your what you would prefer to be your new belief structure. I think this is fundamental for everybody, particularly people in the West who I think experience this challenge um, to a greater degree. Um, so yeah, absolutely, Anthony. I mean, I think it's significantly important.
Yeah, it is. See, excuse me. It's interesting you talked about um, subconscious mind and going deep into it. Um, Unfortunately, psychology only takes us so far, um, but spirituality and even science can take you much further. You see, one thing about science, science doesn't tell you what to believe in. Neither does spirituality. It doesn't tell you what to believe in. It will suggest you, it will lead you, and it will point you in the right direction, but it doesn't tell you what to believe. Well, but all the external systems we have, starting with religion and politics and all the other institutions, they tell us what to believe. And their whole doctrination starts with what we should believe. So here we are, and to start with, let's not believe, let's consider instead whether this is possible, whether this is viable, whether common sense or science alludes to it. See, those are the things we need to have in order to begin a spiritual journey or even a journey into science. We need to have a broad, objective mind that is free to explore. If it is constrained, then the science is going to be rather constrained. In other words, it needs to be much more free.
So Anthony, you allude to another extremely critical element of life,
Yeah,
and how we as an organization, as an organism, I guess, humans can move succinctly more close to understanding many things about life, but something which you're passionate about, and that is our purpose.
yeah,
So when I was first considering this as a teenager, I thought how cruel it was that we're put on this earth with no instruction manual.
yes,
We're just thrown into earth, get on with it. No memory of any of our previous lives or anything like that. It's just get on with it.
yeah,
And then it dawned on me pretty early on that actually we have that instruction manual.
Yes. Yeah, we do.
It is right within us,
Yes.
you know, and the key, the secret to accessing that instruction manual is your intuition, is your internal guidance, is your connection to source, to God, is your connection to your higher self, to your ability to leverage the mindfulness and meditation in order to take advantage of that inner guidance system that you have. And I know you talk a whole bunch about this in your book. I'm just sharing this to the
Thank you.
audience.
Yeah.
Um, and I think actually, um, Anthony, what I'd like to do is ask you some questions about your book, if that's okay.
Okay. And let's do that.
Yeah. So we'll start at the basics. Can you explain what is? And I've got to read it now because make sure I get the term right. What
Okay.
is theistic activism? Please tell us what that is.
Okay. The divine. Um, See, theistic means, obviously it's God. And it is God's activism is what we are talking about. Uh, Many of us have different ideas about who God is, but let's keep to our own ideas who God is. Okay. I'm not here to promote a religion. Okay. Um, Now, see, the idea that God created the universe in 6 days and on the seventh day he went into retirement is nonsense. Creation is something that is still going on. In fact, a lot of the creation is still at its embryonic stage. Creation is ongoing. And see, we don't need to kind of look too far, but look within ourselves. It's, I mean, there are so many of our cells die off, recreated, coming back in full function and born. All of that is taking place within ourselves every moment of our life. Okay. And that is going on by the breath. Okay. In Christianity, it's called the breath of God. In Hinduism and Buddhism, we call that prana. So by way of that prana and that energy of love within the prana, so there is creation is going on, constantly going on. Now, let's take that to the second part. You see, we are created in the image and likeness of God. That is what the Bible says. Fine. And even the Vedas and Vedantas are not any different. See, even Vedas say that our soul is a manifestation of God, is a direct manifestation of God. Our soul is. And, when we realize our soul, all of our karmas are taken away. And this is according to Hinduism. If we really believe in theistic activism, we need to believe, okay, our karmas are going to be taken away. Again, I'm using the word believe. At least consider the relevance of it. You don't have to absolutely believe in it. Consider the relevance that when we realize our soul, our karmas will be wiped out. Okay, same thing. Jesus also says, Jesus talks about fullness of a being, we as fullness of human being. And he alludes a lot to the wellspring that is kind of rising up from our soul. Okay. So the point in both of them is that when we reach our soul, we can observe ourselves being actively engaged in the creative activities of our God, the God we believe in. Okay. Now, that is science, because our soul is engaged in a quantum entanglement, quantum connectivity with the supreme consciousness, which many of us describe as God. So the supreme consciousness and our soul have quantum connectivity. When we realize that part, we can become creative partners with God within our scope of creation or within our purpose of creation in this life. And we can execute that. That is theistic activism.
Brilliant. Yes, no, absolutely. Thank you. Thank you. And absolutely fascinating. But I mean, I wonder if you could just let's step it back a bit and talk a bit about you and how you got to the position that you're in now, because you have a fascinating story, and I think the audience will be absolutely intrigued by what you have to say. So Anthony, tell me, when did you first become aware of your spiritual nature, and when did that journey begin to transpire in your life? I mean, were there any particular significant points or moments in your life that you just went, right, that's it?
Oh, well. Um, Answer to the question is, I realized my calling when I was 4 years old. Uh, Not 40, 4 years old. But I lived the vast majority of my life, my years, denying it.
As many do, yeah, yeah, yeah.
I don't want to have anything to do with it. I want to have a normal life. I want to have a normal everything. Uh, so I tried so hard to chase what is normal outside of me. I don't want to have anything to do with what is normal inside of me. So that's how I spent most of my life. Uh, but see, the awareness of the presence of wisdom within me, I had the overwhelming sense of it ever since I was 4. You see, I knew that there is a whole different universe out there within me. Um, did I want to accept that? No. But resorting back to it from time to time when I get into trouble, when I have problems in my life, and dealing with difficulties and challenges and trials and things like that, that was happening because I considered that was more real than what is external. You know, but that doesn't mean that I did not approach uh, the external faculties to source for intelligence about what I was going through. I did. I approached religions, I approached other gurus, I approached other, theologians and philosophers and mental health people, all sorts of things. Yeah, sure, they took me somewhere, and that rather remained outside of me when my problem was inside of me. Okay, so this is what I called the uh, external intelligence and internal intelligence. Okay. Now, external intelligence is there is nothing to be discounted about. If external intelligence is relevant when we are chasing things that are external to us. when we are doing things that are external to us. Internal intelligence is very different. See, internal intelligence takes us to a level where our soul begins to control both internal and external intelligence. See, this is a kind of a hard phenomena to understand, but I'm asking you to comprehend this. So not comprehend this, just ask the question, what is? Okay? Consider it, in other words. See, we are born with a soul that does not have a beginning or an end. It's an infinite being within ourselves. But we have the external intelligence or the outer intelligence that suggests us, nope, you are limited to this body, and this is your birth, and this birth is everything to you, and after that you are going to die. And when you die, the actualization and everything is going to, in other words, the fullness of your being is you are going to come to realize when you are in purgatory, you know, that is when you don't have a body, but you only have a soul. See, so how can you become fullness of being without your body? You see, so it challenges the whole doctrine of purgatory, which suggests that the fullness, in other words, Jesus talked about the anthropos, the fullness of our being, which he even said it is greater than I myself. In other words, it's greater than Jesus at times, you know. And to that level of fullness of being, every man is created to realize that. And in fact, it is the only creation in the whole universe who can reach to that level of realizations. Others cannot, animals cannot, birds cannot, any other, entity out in the world, any other creative entity cannot do that. But humans can. And human can do that when you reach to that level of realization and you become active in the creative part of God, with God, in partnership with Him, and contribute tremendous things. See, one of the things I want to tell you, it's very relevant, and you can ask me questions about it. You see, we as human beings, uh, we are created with something that is entirely eternal. It's infinity. Infinity does not have a beginning or an end. It's forever. And that infinite element our soul, of ourselves, which is our soul, it is also very creative. Okay. When a creation comes from something that is eternal, the creation itself is going to remain eternal. Now, this is according to Vedas, this is according to Bible. Anything that is produced of an imperishable will remain imperishable. This is gospel. This is Bible. Anything that is produced of an imperishable will remain imperishable. Okay. So for us to kind of create legacies that are imperishable, it is within us. Except we are looking to create, legacies, lasting legacies from things that are external, which is rather limited. You see, creating something, the desire to create something that is imperishable, that lasts forever, that even we live in this world as legacies, for the whole universe to enjoy. And that desire is within us. It is not coming from our intelligence. We are forcing it to come from our intelligence. It is coming from our soul. That is how we are connected to our soul. Just that desire alone tells us you are destined to create something imperishable. And that's why you are here. So instead of that desire drifting us inwardly, we are allowing it to drift it outwards because that is the only thing we know how. We don't know how to go inside, but we know everything about going outside in terms of external intelligence, but going inside we don't. See, this is where spirituality comes into play. It enables you to go that deep in your life in this lifetime.
So, no, thank you, Anthony. I'm absolutely fascinating. I mean, we could talk for hours and hours and hours. I'm conscious that we've been on this call for some time, and I don't know how do you want to do this? Do you want? I've got loads more questions, but what we could do is
And now let's
we,
ask the
we
question.
well, what I was thinking is I'll ask another question now, but then we could maybe do another call. Now we know I'm going to talk to you about your book. I'd
Okay,
love to ask you a lot more questions. Perhaps we can do this again um,
look forward to that. I look forward
in
to
a
that.
little time. But
Okay.
for now,
We
what
can do
I'm
this as a series, a
yeah
conversation
yeah
after.
yeah yeah.
Yeah,
What I'm really, I mean, I've spent a lot of my life looking at the ideologies and substance behind many of the core global religions
yeah.
as such. And I've been absolutely fascinated with the tangents and the differences and how I see them having been corrupted and changed and misinterpreted, but how I see on the flip side the significant knowledge and wisdom and thoroughly engaging life lessons that can be learned from them. I mean, I'm clearly not as versed in the broader subject as you. I wonder if you could tell the audience where you've studied the different religions and what conclusions you came to from your study.
Um, ever since I was a little kid, I was fascinated with Hinduism. Uh, and the reason why is the level of devotion they had. In other words, their devotion to God inspired me to become more curious about the religion. That happened when I was very, very young. I mean, obviously, I grew up in a country and among people who most of them are
Sorry, where did you grow up in India or?
in Sri Lanka, in, in the northern part of Sri Lanka, where majority are Hindus. So all my schoolmates and friends and everybody, they were Hindus, you see. And so their depth and that kind of fascinated me. And clearly, Sri Lanka is a Buddhist country.
And a beautiful country, yes.
Yeah, and Buddhism did not escape me either. I was fascinated with Buddhism as well, you know. And so that fascination um, is that there is truth in it, that there is wisdom in those religions. Um, and that is something that needs to be explored. It really happened when I became, when I was in my 20s, because honestly, I could not fully subscribe to a system that thrives on beliefs and fears and control. Because, I mean, uh, quite honestly, I was born as a Catholic. In fact, I am still a Catholic. Okay. But the distorted Christianity, which thrives on controlling people's imaginations, controlling people's freedom. controlling people's belief systems and all of that. In other words, everything is external. It doesn't lead you towards anything internal. But the more I read about Jesus, Jesus was all about the internal intelligence, not as much about external intelligence. And I could see the difference between the two when I was in my 20s. So there came a point in time I literally left the church and I started exploring Hinduism and I started learning uh, Buddhism because Buddhism, fundamentally and philosophically speaking, there are nuances, there are differences, but the essence is pretty much is the Hindu philosophy of Veda and Vedanta. You see, and but Buddhism is a, is a different take on it. That is again focused on the anthropos, mean the fullness of a human being. Whereas the institutional Hinduism is doing the same thing Christianity was doing, which is binding people based on their karmas and based on their caste and based on everything else and tell them, hey, this is your life, stick to it, move on with it. Okay, your next life would be something else. And if you do this life morally and ethically right, you would be born like a sort of a different human being who is destined for enlightenment. That's nonsense. But the fundamental uh, Hinduism is also the same as Christianity. It's the same as Buddhism. In other words, it is about the fullness of human being, fullness of our being. In the Greek, it's known as anthropos. See, anthropos means fullness of the human being. That's what it means. Uh, so that is how my curiosity, my learning, and everything it is started because it's much more intellectual again. You know, I was looking for internal knowledge by way of external intelligence. Okay, so I started reading all of that, um, and I was able to discern what is common, what is not conflicting between all religions, and so that started happening as I moved later and later on. But in the process of it, um, in in Hinduism, um, you know, and even in Buddhism, but not as much in Buddhism, I I started reaching out to spiritual masters, meaning gurus. Um, Now, this guru culture is very relevant even in Christianity because it is the self-realized master is powerful enough by way of touching you can bring you enlightenment. Okay, um, touching is the Christianity part. I mean, he touched and bringing the Holy Spirit, by way of touching, by way of healing. Everything is by way of touching. So the touch is a big thing in Christianity. Whereas in Hinduism it can happen in many ways. It can even happen, when you fully realize master just looking at you. You see. And it happened even in the life of Jesus. I mean, he healed people by just looking at them, and he healed people by touching them. He healed people by many, many different ways. He healed people. So that a spiritual master and his physical interaction seemed very relevant, for my seeking, which is rather internally. So I reached out to quite a few of them. Okay. Um, and what I came to realize, see, all of them were very interested in them being put on a pedestal and them being served, them being, um, you know, uh, be the center of attention. And yeah, and they were not interested in one of their disciples becoming fully realized.
or better than them. Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that is the thing. But you see, that should not be the case in spirituality. Spirituality is not about the self. In other words, amassing, or following and doing all of that. It is going to happen. Um, it's inevitable, but you need to have the kind of a mind that you are in this world. That your duty is to make another one better than you are.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I teach Reiki, so energy healing, and for me, my ultimate goal is to produce a student who's better than me because that means I've really done my work well. You know,
Yeah, yeah, that
that's a bigger accolade to me than I could dream for.
exactly, and that is your legacy. And if you start that kind of a thing, that kind of a, bringing out the anthropos in another person, and leave
Yeah,
that person as even a better person than I am,
yeah.
that's my legacy. Because that person can go on to do that to someone else, and that legacy can go on. You see, if that person becomes fully realized and fullness of anthropos, then that person is capable of doing that to another person. You see, so that is really, where I parted from a lot of traditional mysticism and evolved something that is more of what Jesus was alluding to when he said, "You can do greater miracles than I could."
So, so Anthony, this reminds me very much of an anecdote, a story that you have used previously, which I think describes this what you're talking about now very well. My suggestion is we do this question and then we end uh, for now and come back to
Okay.
this later. But the question, well, the story I'd love you to tell is the gentleman who started Tata and his philosophy, Tata, the Indian company. And his philosophy that you believe, and I completely agree with you, made him so successful, and how he achieved the business that he has and businesses that he has now.
Well, to me, the philosophy of Tata is not any different than the philosophy of Gandhi. Um, and the philosophy of Jesus. You see, and that philosophy is the philosophy of a servant leader.
Yeah, very very alien to today's leadership.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah. I mean, people in with external intelligence, they thrive on controlling others and having dominance over others and having people, uh, to do things in their orders. People who follow their orders. See, that is a typical external environment, whether it's business or whether it's politics, whether it's
yeah, which I believe is often um, driven by psychological challenges.
yeah,
Um,
it
So
does.
I wouldn't blame anyone for their behaviour because it's usually coming from things that are out of their control. But I hold them responsible if that's you know
Yeah. It is a different kind of a mindset. It's purely based on external intelligence. And the external intelligence, it thrives on controlling other human beings. You see, as I said earlier, it's about the creating legacies. That is really is something that is stemming from a soul. Uh, It same thing applies to control. You see, every one of us have the ability to control. We have the desire to control. You see, but what we are failing to realize is something completely different. You see, and that difference is, see, our soul is created to control our inner intelligence, our mind, our ego, and our external outputs. So the control is shifted to our mindfulness and what is external to us. And our soul is not being a part of it. It is taking a back seat to it.
And I think also in today's or the most recent political economic climate, um, there is significant pressure on individuals to do things a certain way, to build businesses for the sole purpose of selling it in 5 years and make a big profit.
Yeah, because that's the
Yeah,
reality.
and you know, I think that although that may have worked back then, now we have the opportunity to really begin to develop everlasting businesses that focus intently on serving humanity and the earth, and providing ultimate value and purpose for their clientele.
You are absolutely right. What you described is the exit strategy. The investors, whether your business heads want to know or not, the investors want to know what's your exit strategy.
Absolutely, yeah. And the only way you can start the business is by having the investors. So it's a catch 22, you know?
That's it. So everything is controlled externally, and your internal output has very limited scope in all of these. Whereas Gandhi and Tata and Jesus and all of these people, they kind of went the other way around. You see, their control came from their soul, and their calling in life was to serve their people. So they were more interested in bringing, say, disciples and followers and all of that, who are better than they are, who are much more emancipated than they are, much more enlightened than they are. And Tata did the same thing. He wanted employees that are much more peaceful than he is, much more service oriented than he is, and created an environment where internal intelligence and external intelligence can coexist and thrive. Okay, we can go into it in a much, much deeper way. And this is what Jesus alluded to when he said, serve.
Yes, yes. And I think the likes of Steve Jobs springs to mind, and some of the great innovators, even Nikola Tesla way back. So, yeah,
Yeah, they're much more internal, intelligent people, and their external output is controlled by what is internal to them. So unfortunately, we had a culture where such people, mystics and all of them, are kind of put on a pedestal and locked up in a hotel room. It's very sad, but and we gave them little chance to integrate within, in our communities and societies and even businesses. But I think the time has come that such people should emerge uh, into the mainstream communities and societies and in our lifestyles and everything. And I think the time has come for that. But you see, all of us are Nikola Tesla. All of us are, Steve Jobs, Ratan Tata, Gandhi. Maybe even we are greater beings than they are. But we are not going to find out unless we delve deeper. External intelligence will never take us there. Never. That's impossible. Okay. Well, external intelligence is very, very limited and they will keep us limited. Yeah.
and that's what this is all about.
Thank you.
Absolutely, Anthony.
Thank you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
please do get a copy of Anthony's book. It's really fantastic, and
It's
as I said,
ancient
I can see it being extremely valuable for the progress of mankind in general in terms of leadership and how to really inspire to go with inside to find yourself and your divine guidance, and also how to inspire your team and to attract your team to what you're doing. And
yes.
yeah, thank you for
Yeah.
that.
The book is Ancient Wisdom and Modern Leadership. You Insights for timeless innovation and creativity. That's what the book is. It's available on Amazon. And, so I hope you'll get a chance to read it. And yeah, this is a long podcast. But thank you so much. This is very exciting, and we will continue this discussion. I mean, the, this is a kind of a discussion that can take us into a long, long, long time. But unfortunately, um,
Well, I've got plenty more questions, so we'll do this again.